All right, so Director Cheadle has been in the media quite a bit for many different reasons. Again, one of the things we talked about earlier is that it appears that one of her big initiatives was really DEI oriented, wanted making sure that the Secret Service was more diverse, specifically with females. How that could have contributed to the failures that we saw.
So I believe it has a lot of negative effects, and probably not for quite the same reasons that everybody would assume that I would say that. So Director Cheadle, she's got this 30 for 30, which is the 30% by 2030 she would like for the Secret Service to have as females. And I've seen, a lot of press actually about that, not just, has she said it once, but multiple times. She's got programs designed to help that in place and everything else. Here's the problem I see with that. As I mentioned before, the Secret Service has authorities, responsibilities, and duties specifically outlined in U.S. Code Title 18, Section 3056. Now, if you go in there and you actually read all the duties and responsibilities, not a single one of them has anything to do with gender or, inclusion, DEI, or hiring specifically 30% women, none of those things. Yeah. And while I do believe that she should absolutely lose her job, it's actually not for the things that people think. Like, do I think that she should lose her job over what happened on Saturday? No, I think she should lose her job because she wasn't good at it from day one. And I say that because I've seen true visionaries come into the Secret Service, and a visionary is somebody who not only is qualified to do the job, I mean, she's qualified to be the director, yeah. But is that what you want actually to direct the Secret Service in its future?
And the real question is she the most qualified? Because there are reports coming out that Jill Biden herself had a role in getting her appointed. It appears that she was a DEI hire to begin. When we have an agency that has a role as critical as the Secret Service, performance should be the number one objective in determining whether or not we hire. We want the absolute best, most capable person leading that organization. And quite frankly, those same standards should be applied as far as who fills the roles within that agency, agents.
So I do think that, I know there's a lot of people, I've heard a lot of statements about, that she was a DEI hire. I mean, there's no way you could actually know whether she's a DEI hire, of course, but the fact of the matter is, let's look at, how did she become the director of the Secret Service? She did know Jill Biden. She did know people on Jill Biden's staff actually that recommended, hey, somebody in her staff actually recommended, hey, she should be the director. I think she'd be a good candidate for that. And of course she was considered, and then she was nominated and brought up and, put in the position. So looking at that process, were there more highly qualified candidates? I mean, honestly, 100%, I could say, in my opinion, there were absolutely better candidates than her. I think that she's qualified, but was definitely not the most highly qualified individual that you would want in that position.
Yeah, again, going back to the critical role of whether it's Secret Service, whether it's other departments, law enforcement agencies, the military, special operations, we've seen this time and time again where this push to lower the standards to ensure that we can get females in there. One of the things I'm really sick of and I'm tired of playing the game of is that, look, all women and men are equal. Their capabilities, however, are not. And let's stop pretending that they are. When you look at the Secret Service, when you look at the military, even like physical fitness standards and things like that, they're on a sliding scale. There's one standard for physical fitness for women, and there's a whole nother one for men. If we are serious about wanting the best of the best in these roles, there should be no difference. There's one standard, everybody is held to that standard, you can meet that standard, and if you can't, then go on. If you're a female and you want to be a special operator or whatever, well, let's special operate. You know what? You need to be able to meet the exact same standards for men when it comes to whatever the physical fitness standards are. And I'm talking about not lowering those standards so they're more easily attained, which is what we see time and time again, but making sure that we have a very high, hard standard, tough standard to meet, and that everybody meets those, whether it's the amount of weight that you carry, how fast you can run, push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, whatever it is. And we've seen the degradation of American capabilities time and time again because of these silly, stupid policies being pushed upon us that are nothing other than political activism. And we've seen political activists being put in place where we need leadership, not activism. And it does appear that has been the focus of Director Cheadle. I think anybody in charge of an organization like the Secret Service, when you have a failure as massive as what we saw, the embarrassment upon our country that the agency has brought upon us as a nation, as citizens, somebody that had some honor would just resign. I mean, no matter what, if the buck stops with you, you clearly did not set the tone, set the standard to where success was ensured. So it's time to move on and find another job. And quite frankly, if it is determined that there are men and women on the ground that failed, and look, these can be great people. Like, I don't care how good you are at anything. We have lapses in judgment. We have, maybe we're tired, maybe whatever it is. There are lots of incidents and examples where the highest performing people in a moment fail. And, sometimes that's a matter of, holding them accountable. They should be held accountable one way or the other. It could be, some remedial training, maybe some sort of letter in the record, whatever it is. Or, hey, you know what, this is such a big deal that, yeah, you're a great asset to this organization, but this was a big deal and it's time for you to go find another place to earn a paycheck. All right, so if you like content like this, make sure you like, subscribe, throw a comment down below, share this interview. I think it's really important. Number one is that helps us out, but on top of that, I think we're covering some information that just hasn't been shared anywhere else. I think the public needs to know. But just like we talked about in this interview, if you're going to come to the correct conclusions, you need as much good information as you have. And I think a lot of this information is just not known to the public. Also, if you'd like to support and contribute to what we do on this channel, our Patreon link is down in the description below. We really do appreciate the support there. And if you're not already following us, here are our other social media sites. Make sure you go follow us on there. We do a lot of cool things on there as well. And every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern time, we have our Dangerous Liberty podcast. It's a live podcast. We talk about guns, gear, training, politics. We have special guests on all the time. We'd love for you to join us live so you can ask questions that we answer. We read your comments. It's a good time. Come join us. You'll have a great time as well. And I hope you enjoy the rest of this interview. When we're talking about these organizations and how severe the consequences are if they fail even once, like, we have to demand the best. And that is not what we've been doing as a country, as a government for many, many years.
I 100% agree with that. The analogy actually was put out to me one time and said, hey, would you, play football? Can you play football? And I said, yeah, I can, play football. As a matter of fact, I sometimes on Sunday afternoon, and I'm watching a football game or something like that, I think to myself, man, I could be a running back. I could do that, right? And then I get up off the couch to go get myself some chips or some soda or something like that. And then I realize when I feel my joints moving, maybe I'm not at the level the NFL would really like me to be, right? So, that's where the big difference is. Do you want somebody who's qualified? Am I qualified to play football? Sure, I could play football. I can do it, right? But am I at the level that you really want? And you don't see the NFL going, you're qualified. You could play football. We'll take you.
Well, and more importantly, that doesn't make you less of a human being. It doesn't make you less valuable because you can't meet the physical standards that are required to play that sport.
Exactly.
And that is one of the things that gets, continues to be conflated. Like, there are certain roles that men are going to be the best at, period. Like, men are stronger. Like, there's so many things that men do better than women, but there's lots of things that women do better than men. Just because you're a female and you can't meet these standards doesn't make you lesser of a person or less valuable in any way. It just means you can't do these things and you shouldn't be doing these things, and we shouldn't force you into this role or force you upon other people that are trying to do this job at the highest level possible just because we're meeting some sort of quota.
So, a really good example of some of the things that you're talking about here is some years ago, actually, I was on a detail, and this was actually in Russia, and there was two agents that were standing in a hallway. They were protecting, the president at the time, and they were preventing people. Their post was to prevent people from coming down this hallway towards his room, his hotel room. and a couple FSB guys, rather large guys, came up. And here's the thing.
People that don't know, FSB guys are Russian intelligence agents.
So these guys were coming down the hallway, and one of the female agent that was there, I think she was a great agent, really good person, physically fit. She could pass the fitness test, flying colors, everything else. But she was also, fairly short. I think she was like maybe 5'3", 5'4", or something like that. 5'5" topping out there, right? And probably about 120 pounds. But she could do the job. She was really good at it. She knew what she was doing.
She could meet the standards that the Secret Service required and did it at a high level, the current female standards that the Secret Service required of her.
Absolutely. And she was very sharp, smart, everything. Now, one of the FSBG agents actually, when she stepped in front of him, actually reached out, grabbed her by the throat, throws her and pins her against the wall, and she's not able to really do anything against that. Now, the other agent that was there with her in the hallway, actually a rather large guy, excellent agent again, comes over, very sharp. He comes over and he resolves the situation. Let's put it like that. But I know that incident was so traumatizing to her. Actually, when she got back, into her credit, and I have mad respect for her still even today, she left the agency. She put in her resignation and said, this isn't for me. And I think that's a real wake-up call for some people, because, I see a lot of things where people have a lot of opinions where people have the idea that being more diverse makes us better. Well, let's just say that that's true, right? But everybody who is diverse, who's in that job, should be equally as good and capable, as to do that job. If you're provided protection, to protect your life, do you want somebody who is, you fit the bill, you made the cut, good job, pile? Or do you want somebody who is just an excellent individual all around? They have the size, they have the strength and the stamina that they can actually fight somebody to protect your life. Right. And that's literally what the agency does. They have to be ready to fight somebody to protect the life of a protectee. Yeah. And I don't think that in many cases, even though you have somebody who is qualified, that necessarily makes them the best person for the job.
Yeah, there should never be two standards for anything. It should be 100% performance-based, and if you can't do the job, then, go find something else that, there's probably something else intended for you that you're gonna be happier doing anyhow. But anytime that we have a sliding scale for standards, we're setting ourselves up for failure. It is what it is, and we have to get over this idea that trying to, when we're shooting for quotas, a 30% quota, what that means is that there are going to be people that are more capable, more qualified to do that job, but they're going to be forced out of that position because we have a certain quota, whether it be because of skin color, race, creed, gender, sexual preference, whatever it is. Like those should not be part of the calculus when it comes to choosing the absolute best people for critical roles like this. So, given these initiatives, number one, do you think that played a role in the failures that we saw during this incident? And then also, and again, this is speculation, but I think it's coming from a place of kind of obvious, right? It's an obvious impact on any organization like the Secret Service. What impacts do you see down the road that initiatives like this are going to have on the capabilities of the Secret Service?
I think that if they were to pursue this 30 for 30 initiative, I think it's absolutely going to continue to degrade the Secret Service tremendously. And it's not because you're trying to recruit more females. It's because of what you're willing to do to get them. You're saying, I want 30% by 2030. How do you ensure that? If you just don't get the applicants, there's not as many female applicants as what people think that are even trying to get into the Secret Service. It's predominantly dominated male field, period, law enforcement, And this goes back to when I said, if you put a director in charge of an agency, they should have a vision for the agency. She doesn't have a vision for the agency. She has a vision for DEI.
Yeah.
And that's literally the only vision she's got. How do I make this agency more capable of actually achieving what it's required to do according to law? There is nothing about any of her initiatives that actually achieve that. Zero. She has no vision as to, new expertise or new equipment or new technology or an entirely new division that she wants to start or push that's going to enhance
or increase agent numbers to begin with. Like the Secret Service, one of the things that people don't realize is Secret Service is actually really small. I mean, there's been legislation proposed to, add like 100,000 or 87,000 IRS agents because we want more money.
When you have a director with no vision whatsoever, when they have no pushes, when they have no programs that they're trying to, increase or get better at actually doing your job, then you have an agency with no focus. When you have an agency with no focus, that trickles all the way down from the top, all the way down to the lowest man, and then it breeds complacency. It just tells you, hey, really what I'm concerned is 30 for 30. Good job out there, guys, whatever, 30 for 30, this is what you're living for. So if I don't buy into your 30 for 30, really all I'm doing is I'm just showing up and I'm just going to collect a paycheck, and I'm doing this job because I care about it. But at the same time, you're breeding complacency from the top down.
Well, and we even had a foreign news agency show video of the female agents there on Trump's detail, and they called them the fumbling fumbleinas.
Well, as the Secret Service rushed to get Donald Trump away from the chaos, have a look at the fumbling fumbleinas who comprise his security detail.
That's pretty embarrassing. And so what we see there is, number one, we have an agent that isn't doing her job, that can't seem to know what to do. It's completely confused, can't holster a weapon. Knowing what I know about training people and worked with law enforcement, that wasn't the first time that ineptness was identified in that particular agent. So do you think when you have someone that is clearly an underperformer, but do you think that could have played a role where we identify someone that is not a high performer, but we're going to keep them because of these types of initiatives?
I don't know if that really plays a part in keeping personnel. So you have the Office of Personnel Reliability, and of course, if you have people that fall below a standard of performance or, however their conduct is or something like that, it's reviewed by the Office of Personnel Reliability, who reviews what the standards are, reviews all these things, and then they come up with what are they going to do in response to this if this person is not meeting the standard, whether it's they can't seem to shoot or whether it's they can't seem to run or whatever the case might be. Sure. What do we do with them now? And they try to figure all those things out, of course, according to the regulations that they have to abide by. And I couldn't tell you actually what they are. I was never in the Office of Personnel Reliability.
Right. And we haven't seen this person's records. We don't know, but
no.
Again, I think it's safe to assume, it is safe to assume, given what we've seen with the push for DEI, that it's having a major negative effect, and either directly or indirectly could have led to some of the failures there. Speaking of the Secret Service and all this money that we're spending everywhere, we're spending billions of dollars in Ukraine. We spend millions every month sending to the Taliban. We have all these spending we're arming IRS agents and training them. That takes millions and millions of dollars to get that initiative started, to sustain training, to buy equipment. Same thing with like post office inspectors. We arm and train them. I have no idea why. So there's lots and lots of money being directed at these other agencies. It doesn't seem like they even have a need for, their specialty is not law enforcement. Like, I think there's a good argument to be said that none of these people should be carrying a gun. And if they need a law enforcement response, we have other people within DOJ and local and state law enforcement that they can call on to actually execute these roles if they need an armed response. You know, with the Secret Service, you've told me how many hours that you work, not only during election years, but just on average. So talk to the viewers, explain to them a little bit about how that works.
It was not actually uncommon especially in an election year, where you would see where I worked between 80 and 100 plus hours of overtime in a pay period,
Wow.
which is 2 weeks, right?
So we're talking working 200 hours almost within a 2-week period.
Yes, and that does happen, right? So at that point, the only thing that you're doing is you're eating, sleeping, and working, and that is literally it.
And probably a lot less sleeping.
Definitely a lot less sleeping. So that does happen, and it's because the agency it's notoriously been short always. It's never had the amount of personnel that's needed, and you have to look at again. What's the pool of people that we have to select from? Yeah. When you talk about DEI, nobody wants to talk about the real problem, right? The real problem is society. What do we actually have to select from, right? That's the real problem that nobody wants to try to address.
Or at least another
with.
problem on top of that.
It's a problem on top of that, 100%. Yeah. But if you're, if I say I want, 30% females, but I know that the pool that I've got to draw from is significantly greater than what I currently got. One of the biggest problems, of course, is even drug use. We've legalized marijuana, and so everybody's like, oh, well, it's great. It's legal. I can smoke marijuana. But that also kind of disqualifies you if you just smoked marijuana last week and now you're coming in for an interview to be a part of the process to join the Secret Service.
Sure.
That's not going to happen.
So talk a little bit about the turnover rate within Secret Service.
So as a result of you can't staff up the Secret Service to the levels that it should be, as a result of that, everybody's working so many hours, and I told you 80 to 100 plus hours of overtime, is what I would average. The worst case about that, by the way, is we're not just talking about like, a 1-2 week pay cycle that might happen in. We're talking about, I get a phone call, hey, I'm going to send you out on this trip. You could be out on the road for a little bit covering candidates and everything else. So make sure you pack appropriately, right? And I pack up and I leave, only come to find out that I'm actually gone for the next 3 to 4 months and not getting a single day off, working 80 to 100 hours of overtime per pay period that entire time. So imagine the burnout rate. And I'm going to share this with you. So I looked online. As a matter of fact, I was looking a lot of these things up, and they have, I believe it was 2022, 48% departure rate from the Secret Service. That is such a massive turnover rate. These men and women are way overworked, way understaffed, and quite frankly, we might actually not have seen anything like Butler if one of the things that took place is actually staffing up the Secret Service where it actually should be, and then utilizing training cycles where you can take people out of rotations or shifts and things like that so that they can spend a week or two, training, refreshing a lot of skills and abilities and things like that to ensure that everybody's on the same page and moving forward. Making
sure that they get, number one, time with their family, some time off, then go into a training cycle for a while, then go back into an operational cycle. Mm-hmm. And that is not a thing that happens within the Secret Service currently.
That is definitely not a thing that happens, And
I guess your answer to that is because there's just not enough people to be able to execute that.
That's absolutely true. And that's just basically, you're talking about officers and agents at this point, right? We're not even talking about specialized positions. Yeah. So just to give you a concept of that, right? When I went through Secret Service sniper school, it's a pretty long school. Sure. Several weeks, and when you get ready to go through that school, everybody who's trying out for that team, they show up on day one. We started with 43. By the time all the qualifications and everything else had been completed, and we were in the last 2 weeks of training, we had 5 remaining, and that's actually a pretty high class. Actually, there are sometimes when you only graduate maybe 3 or 4. I think there was one class that I had heard of. It was a while back. So I could be mistaken about this. I don't think I am, but I think there was like maybe 2 graduates out of that class. So, but we think about all the manpower that you've got, and only this many people could make it through the training. And they're not gonna, they're not gonna skimp on that training. They're not gonna say, oh, well, you know what? We need people, so let's let this go.
Well,
why would you do that?
Let me ask you this. Have you seen any examples personally of where they have lowered standards or made some sort of exceptions that wouldn't be normal to ensure that women and or minorities are somehow represented in those special teams?
I have, actually. As a matter of fact,
you know what? We'll leave it right there. I think we know that that's taking place, and that was, you've been out of the Secret Service a while. That was before some of these DEI pushes were as forceful and implemented into the government as much as they are. Going back to kind of overwork. So what we're saying is we have agents on the ground that have worked possibly 150 to 200 hours within a 2-week period. They're completely fatigued, mentally and physically fatigued, working at a major deficit physically, probably have a lot of stress of things going on at home. Being gone that long, is a huge detriment on a family and a marriage, which also plays a real role on the impacts of your personal health, your mental health, all those things. And this also goes back to why we have these high performance standards, because what we're saying is like, all right, Mike, I need you to do this PT test, and I need you to be at this level. You need to be able to run the 2 mile in this time. You need to have be able to do this many pull-ups, whatever else. That is you at your best, right? So, you're not coming off a 200-hour week usually and going right into a PT test. Maybe that happens, maybe that doesn't, I don't know. But the point is that that's the best. And so that when you get out there and you've worked that much and you're that tired and you're that fatigued, you are highly degraded. So if we start off at that sliding scale, we make the performance standards even lower. Now we've lowered those standards based on fatigue, based on stress, being overworked, family problems, all these things playing a part to where now we have a person that is quite frankly not even mission capable, or at such a deficit that they can't do their job effectively. So again, this goes back to why we need these high standards, hard to attain standards for men or women, and the standards are always the same. But based on that information, we clearly do not have, for whatever reason, right? Whether it be because of fatigue, whether it be because of budgets, you're not even filling all the roles or the job positions that are allotted to the Secret Service to begin with. So, clearly we have a major personnel shortage. Why hasn't there been more of an effort to address that? Because what that tells me is that when we do have agents on the ground saying, hey, we need these additional resources, it is impossible to fill those resources and to do the job as best as possible because we just don't have the people to do it.
So typically, especially when you're talking about an election year, even though it costs significantly more money to get through an election year, the plan for that is we run out of money in the budget, which is the same, for the most part, it's the same pretty much for every year, right? But they expect to run out of money. And the plan is, as soon as we get to this point, what we're going to do is go before Congress and ask for additional money, which they always get. They have always had to do that in an election year, and they have always gotten the approval, right? We need this much money. And it's not like, we need to buy this equipment or we need to buy specialized stuff here. We're talking about paying for man hours, right? When you start thinking about, I have to pay you for a regular 80 hours, which is already easily budgeted for, and now you're more than doubling that. And what's that going to cost me, right? And you're doing that almost agency-wide. But the sad part is, not even in an election year, you've got, even on a regular rotation, most of the time you have regular overtime. There's even periods where you get so short personnel that they have mandatory overtime, right? You have to work this overtime. And it's not because, they're just making sure that everybody feels the pain equally. They're actually doing that because everybody needs to have to pull the weight.
All right, Mike. So we've covered a lot. And I think, number one, I just want to thank you for coming on. I think this is really important. I think the American people deserve these answers. And I think we've shared a lot of information, or you've provided a lot of information that we haven't seen anywhere else. And it gives a better insight to understanding what happened, and gives the American people the ability to, if you're going to come to a conclusion, at least that conclusion is based on at least a large data set of correct information. So I think what you're doing here is really important, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on. Two things I want to kind of cover before we end this. Number one, we have some questions from our Patreon account. We have supporters on our Patreon that have asked some questions. I told them that those questions would be answered. And then we even have some subscribers that have asked questions down in the comments that I think are relevant. Most of those we've covered either directly or indirectly through this interview, but there's one thing that I heard come up several times now, and that is if you look on the overview here, we can see there's this water tower, and a lot of people are saying, hey, why didn't we have a CS team up there? Getting a better view of the venue and of some of the area around there.
So the highest point is not always the best point. As we talked about, the posts are selected by the counter sniper team because of what they can see from those vantage points.
So by posts, you mean the positions that they are putting counter sniper team or whatever else, right?
Yes, where they are selecting to set up for that venue. That's actually done based on what they can see. We talked about in the advance that you walk in the steps of the protectee, you see and identify all areas of potential threat based on what can actually see your protectee from all those locations. Now I've got to assign mitigating efforts, right? So I'm going to identify the posts that can view all of as much of that as humanly possible. Now, I could put something up really high. As a matter of fact, there's been a lot of times when I've worked with other agencies, and their first inclination is, well, let's see, that's really high, higher's better, I can see more stuff, and that's literally it. You can see more stuff. It's a lot of stuff you have to look at that actually doesn't even matter because it doesn't look in at your protectee.
Regardless of elevation, you're looking at the best, you're looking for the best vantage point that is going to provide you the ability to see and secure, number one, see threats and be able to secure your protectee.
Absolutely. And there's even been some times where, we've worked unelevated at all, right off the ground, because what I can see is what I need to see. And everything else I've found out ways to mitigate. Now we look, at that water tower. Everybody can see the water tower on that graphic, or on the in the maps there, the area. And yeah, there's a water tower there. But one, can you see the protectee? Two, is this a place that somebody can actually take a shot from? Have you ever been up on those? Yeah, I have. Those catwalks are pretty narrow.
Like this wide.
You're not doing so good. I mean, I'm not saying it's not possible, right, but it was a greater distance, which you're talking about, two things here. You're talking about slope dope, if you want to talk about that in another podcast.
We're not going to.
But we're not going to talk about slope dope here. But you're talking about, slope dope pretty much from that drastic of an angle. But you're also talking about the inability to actually even be in a position where you can accurately engage the target, right? So looking at those things plus the distance, the further distance is going to be a challenge for the average person.
That's almost double the distance from where Trump was to where that building that Crooks took shots from to the water tower. And when you are in a position like that, you might have doubled the distance from your protectee or whatever it is, or doubled the distance you have to, but it's like quadrupling what you have to cover square footage wise. And it's not necessarily a great spot. And it's definitely, if you've ever been on a water tower, it is very difficult to maneuver around there. The other thing is, if we're worried about threats getting up to the water tower, obviously they have to traverse that entire ladder. It's easy to see them. They're going to have a hard time taking a shot from that distance as well as that elevation and just the given space, typically on a catwalk around a water tower. So water tower, not a good spot to be. You wouldn't have put anybody up there. There shouldn't have been anybody up there. There's that.
100%. I would have actually posted somebody, maybe checking, again, identifying that as a potential threat. Granted, water tower ladders are usually locked up, but yeah, I would probably have requested local law enforcement actually monitor that. And again, having that communication to make
sure you would have given the local law enforcement more roles and responsibilities than just traffic control.
I would have given them far more tasks than that, and I would have actually followed up to ensure that that was being done.
Another question from Otter there on Rumble was, and I've seen this placed many other places as well, were the 2 locations that the CST were in, were those good locations from what you can see?
From what I can see, again, this is conjecture because
you're not there on the ground.
Right. I didn't walk the steps, right?
You can't see what they could see.
But I believe those posts actually to probably have been the best posts that they could have selected in this.
I mean, just looking from what I can see, I mean, you have basically 2 sniper positions from 2 vantage points that has really good cross coverage. I mean, it's pretty ideal in my mind, just from what I can see.
And I want to actually, let me just throw this in there if you don't mind. I think it's a big mistake if the Secret Service does a knee-jerk reaction and dictates to the counter sniper team advanced guys that they must have people on these rooftops and everything else. I really hope that they consider the fact that if they want to put people on the rooftop, on rooftops, it's not like one rooftop. You're talking about where do you draw that line? Number 1, who's drawing that line? But 2, now how many personnel is that? And do I have communication with them? Can I identify them? And now I still got to look at them, right? I've still got to make sure it's actually them. I don't want anybody up there. The more movement you have on all these rooftops, the more difficult it is, because that's everything I've got to be able to look at. And I hope they don't knee-jerk reaction this. I hope they make adequate and correct and accurate changes that actually affect
and not just do something to appease public opinion, and public opinion that is based on ignorance. You know, and that's one thing that I think is lost on this, is like suddenly we're now trying to look at ways to mitigate a threat that happens to be a very untrained 20-year-old that just, whatever you want to call it, got lucky, fell through the crack, whatever it is. But the other thing that, and probably more, or at least part of that threat continuum or spectrum of threats that we need to look at, is the more highly trained individuals as well. Absolutely. So, you know, whether it's, you know, somebody that puts on a SWAT uniform and looks like, or even a Secret Service uniform, and is now on a rooftop that you think is Secret Service and is now a foreign actor, highly trained and capable person, you know, that's another possibility. And we can't just suddenly get focused on, you know, somebody LARPing with a AR-15 that happened to be successful. So I think that needs to be considered as well. The other thing that you talked about was some of the public statements by different officials and things like that you want to address directly.
I do. There's been so many interviews out there, and you kind of said something to that effect, you know, earlier on. You know, everything from Fox News to CNN to podcasters, they have security experts, and these security experts, they might be experts, but they're experts in their field. They're not experts in this field. They don't know what they're talking about. You know, even personnel that have been trained as snipers, you know, like you said earlier, the military snipers, extremely different from Secret Service counter sniper team. Law enforcement snipers in any other agency across America, they are not trained to eliminate or neutralize threats easily up to 1,000 yards out. That's not going to happen. Right. And they're actually, the majority of them are probably operating off of green light systems. They have to have this. There's so many different things involved here.
You know, the other considerations like CAT teams to coordinate with. Like there's so many, you know, one of the analogies I gave before, and I think this is really correct, it's like having 2 doctors. If you have a podiatrist, all right, a foot doctor that is now trying to criticize a surgery from a neurosurgeon. Like they're both doctors, but like it is so different between those two that this person really should just withhold their opinion because they don't know what they don't know. And I think that's kind of what we're getting into. You need to understand the specificity at which any of those, the same thing goes with a person that's only worked on CST, shouldn't be, you know, projecting their capabilities, their operational environment, what they do, their TTPs onto a military sniper team. Like it's just so different. You know, really the only thing they have in common is they're both typically good at shooting small targets at distance. What their mission is and how they execute that mission is just drastically different. We need to understand that.
Absolutely. And one of the other comparisons that I'm seeing and hearing a lot about, and they bring the video footage up, as a matter of fact, and they play it, and they seem to keep talking about DEI and all this other stuff when they do it, is the difference between when Ronald Reagan had an assassination attempt, and of course former President Trump, now candidate Trump's assassination attempt, right? And to be quite frank, is apples and oranges. It's not anywhere near being the same thing. John Hinckley Jr. actually got in very close to President Reagan with a firearm, with a pistol, right? Two things there. One, he's not a trained distance shooter or anything else. He's in there with a pistol in close, and he takes a shot, and he's not been through any kind of a cleared perimeter of any kind, right? That would never have happened today, right? So we took a lot of steps, and we learned from that experience, changed the entire way the Secret Service does business and everything else. As a result of that, as a matter of fact, it broke out some things for us. But then you also look at the fact that Reagan actually finished the venue. He was actually moving to a car paces away and getting towards and going in the car already. And then they forced him in the car. This is like a no-brainer at this point, right? The mindset is already there. We're getting him out of here. That's the mindset that's already in play here.
So you're talking about people that are comparing the responses and essentially saying that the response during the Reagan assassination attempt was better than what we have today. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's, yeah. I mean, the idea that we were better then than we are now is not even close. As a matter of fact, because would you say that the Secret Service is much more capable, much more sophisticated, has better staff, better training than they did back in, 1981?
Absolutely.
Okay, so there's that on the table. The other thing, too, is the fact that John Hinckley didn't kill President Reagan was just pure luck.
Absolutely.
It was pure luck. So I think we can kind of put that to bed. Hopefully you can apply your common sense to that. What else?
I think that pretty much covers it. I just want people to say, if you're watching interviews and you hear anybody out there interviewing somebody who's critiquing or commenting, it should be somebody who was in the Secret Service or did one of these jobs, not somebody who did something similar to this job or doesn't do anything and has never done anything even that similar to the job whatsoever, because they're just filling time. I think it was maybe within 48 hours, Fox News actually interviewed this guy. His first name was John. Seemed like a really smart guy. He was really smart about the things that he actually knew something about. And we talked about this a little bit earlier. This person that they interviewed actually gets on TV, and he even says something so ridiculous as to say, we need to take all special forces and make their own branch of service with them, and then they can do the protection for the president. I'm like, I mean, that's wrong, as you know, on many levels, to include even legally, you can't do that. It's
unconstitutional.
So it's unconstitutional.
Don't worry about that.
That's kind of like,
our current government has not been worried about the constitutionality of things for a while. So I don't even know if that is a relevant argument anymore.
That's what that matters.
No, there's going to be a lot of stuff said. And look, and I'll tell you, I'm going to throw a disclaimer out there. I had a lot of people contacting me, asking me to give my opinion because they knew that I was a former sniper. I know enough to know that I didn't know enough to actually comment on what actually took place. And I wanted to reach out to my friend that I knew had the experience. And the reality is, as careful as we have been, we'll probably get some things wrong. Some new information is going to come out. And if new information, relevant information, we're definitely going to put this interview out. But if new relevant information that changes the dynamics of what we talked about here, we'll come out and make a correction or address that directly. But we've attempted, I think, to be very careful and make sure that we delineate between the areas that we're speculating on and, what just the ground facts, and helping you understand how Secret Service works, how advances work, how the protection portion of that works, the before, during, and after. And I don't know of any other source that has gone into the level of detail that we have. Hopefully you found this information helpful and educational and maybe even a little entertaining at some points. All right, so we covered a lot, Mike. Any final things you want to throw out there? Any other relevant information?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, folks, we really appreciate you tuning in. We really do. And again, make sure you like, subscribe, throw a comment down below. All those things help support us. And while information like this is great, what we always focus on is training. So make sure you go to ParamountTactical.com. Go check out our upcoming training schedule. We'd love to have you out. We'd love to meet you in person. Whether it's handgun, carbine, long range, medical training, you name it, we do it all. As a matter of fact, if you're interested in long range shooting, make sure you go check out our XP Long Range Academy that we're doing in conjunction with Ray Helms from the X-Ring. The absolute best long range training that is available in this country. I guarantee it. But until next time, stay armed, stay ready. We'll talk to you soon.